think that's the frustration with tax software today is, so much effort is still being put into preparing a return. A lot of it shouldn't be done by humans. It should be automated. And, while that might sound scary to some people, what our customers have been finding is they love it, right? They're like, oh, the data, I don't have to worry about the data. It flows from transaction to accounting to Tallyfor to the return, and then it's to the IRS. It frees your brain up, right? I don't need to think about punching the numbers in. I can think about my client.
If you'd like to earn CPE credit for listening to this episode, visit earmarkcpe.com. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Continuing education has never been so easy. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Earmark Podcast. I am your host, Blake Oliver, CPA, and I'm joined today by Peter Wen of Tallyfor.
Hey, Blake, how you doing?
I'm doing really good. Peter, we go way back. I'm so glad to talk to you because it must be like 10 years now, maybe more than that.
Yeah, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Just about that. That's about right. Yeah.
We met when you were at Xero. You were one of the early employees at Xero in the Americas, in the San Francisco office.
I think 2012 we probably met. Xero just came to the US. I joined very early. I'm a former CPA, so they hired me because I actually knew about accounting and tax in the US. So I was really lucky to join that team early on in San Francisco, and it was a lot of fun working with that whole team, getting Xero here in the US.
And how many employees were there when you joined?
I think I'm number 10. It depends of whether you count, Craig and Catherine Walker, the CTO and community manager. So it was very early. We were in startup HQ south of the Mission, and then we moved offices very quickly. But it was a lot of fun.
And you stayed there for a while. And how long were you at Xero?
Yeah, I stayed there a good 6-7 years. Did a lot there, expert on the accounting stuff, tax stuff. I was really on the product mostly. It grew really fast, and we did a lot of good work over in those early days.
And now you've got your own company. You've got a startup called Tallyfor. Tell me about Tallyfor. I know you're in the tax space. What do you do?
Tallyfor is automation for tax in the cloud. As we'll talk about today a little bit, tax is such an important part of everyone's professional life, the CPAs and the tax professionals that are listening. And there aren't really good cloud products out there. So Tallyfor is building a really great cloud product for y'all.
You had me at cloud and tax because I don't come from the tax world. I come from the bookkeeping, client accounting services, CAS world. And so it's been strange for me to watch as over the last 10 years, decade or more, all of this cloud technology has come to CAS and bookkeeping. And now we can do everything in the cloud. There's literally nothing you can't do in the cloud anymore.
Right. The bookkeeping side, the cash services side of the house really got the cloud tools first. And the tax world has been neglected for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? There's very few cloud products for the tax side. And that's what we aim to change. And I'm doing that because, when I was a CPA and did a lot of tax, I was sick of typing. I got carpal tunnel. Why enter data twice between systems and things like that? It's really an underinvested space, and it should change for everyone's benefit.
So I'm excited to have you on because I'm sure you've done a ton of research on tax and tax software and tax workflows in the cloud and what's manual now. And I am eager to learn. There are these massive companies that make tax software that hasn't changed, that seems like it hasn't changed in decades.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, to get an overview from you of the market. What is the market for tax software in the world of client accounting services or bookkeeping? We know we've got QuickBooks, we've got Xero, we've got FreshBooks. There's a handful of major players, right?
Yeah.
And I want to know what is that in tax? What does that look like? Who's dominant and who is who are the companies I should know?
It's often overlooked that, right, the two sides of the house, bookkeeping and tax, are very different. I say they're like cousins, right? Even if you've been in the world for the CAS world for a long time, you may not know the tax products and they're not that apparent. But I like to say that there's really kind of the four big players that make the software for the professionals, and I count them as Drake. And then there's Thomson Reuters, has UltraTax, and CCH Access, owned by Wolters Kluwer, has a couple of products under their stable. Pro Systems and CCH Access are kind of the two big ones. And then of course, you have Intuit. Intuit has three different products under their name as well: Pro Series, Pro Connect, and Lacert. So those are really the names that are kind of current today.
Okay. So I'm setting up a firm and I'm going to add tax. It's either going to be most likely Drake, Thomson Reuters. What was the name of that product?
Thomson Reuters UltraTax
UltraTax.
is their kind of flagship product. They are also working on Onvio, a cloud product that they've been working on the past couple years, and everyone's looking forward to that product as well.
Well, I remember that they had to delay the release of that. They've been struggling.
Yeah, it's not easy building a cloud product, right?
Yeah.
Kind of a different way of thinking of how to architect it. So it's not an easy lift. Yeah, everyone's definitely wanting a true cloud product, modern, new, and they're waiting for the details on that as well.
Okay, so Drake, Thomson Reuters, Wolters Kluwer, and you said there's two systems: Pro Systems and CCH Access.
Yeah,
What's the
Pro Systems is their kind of more on-prem product. CCH Access is a little bit newer, and it's meant to be a cloud product that's networked, not necessarily a browser-based cloud product.
So would that be like hosting a QuickBooks desktop file, similar to that?
It's a little bit better in the sense that it's not a desktop product put in the cloud on a virtual desktop. It is managed by CCH as a network product.
Okay.
If I don't get too technical.
So how do I access it? Do I use a virtual terminal? Is there a
Yeah, you
program?
download a small piece of software, and it kind of automatically hooks you into your purchased licenses.
Okay. So semi-cloud, I guess, would be the term.
Yeah, the convenience is there. You don't need a virtual desktop, and it's a little bit easier to deploy. It's actually a little bit cheap. You don't have to pay for a virtual desktop as well, so it has its advantages. It's not browser based in the sense I couldn't do it on a Mac, for example. I couldn't do it on a Chrome browser, but it's definitely more robust.
And Pro Systems, the other Wolters Kluwer product, is that the
Yeah.
older one?
Yes. That one is still widely used in large firms, that they do have an IT department. They can deploy it in-house, on-premise. So that's still a very popular product.
So that's where I have the server in my office and everyone's connecting to that server, and there's
Yes.
desktop software and all that. Okay. And UltraTax, the Thomson Reuters product UltraTax, is that similar? Is that desktop?
Yes. Well, no, that's that was typically right. It came off of a desktop product, so that typically is hosted on a virtual desktop, and you access it in that fashion.
Okay. Virtual desktop. Got it.
Yeah.
And then Onvio, the Thomson Reuters product that's coming, is pure cloud.
Yes.
So people must be really excited about that because there aren't too many true cloud tax products from the major players.
Yes, everyone is looking forward to that product, and it's definitely the cloud is where we want to be, where everyone wants to be, for many different reasons, and we don't need to go through them here, right? Just
our listeners
Yeah.
don't need to attend the session where we say what is the cloud. I that's a given. That's a prerequisite for listening to this podcast.
Thanks for making sure the right people get in.
I'm not going to ask you, Peter. So tell us, what is the cloud? How does cloud computing work? I think that would immediately.
I got a cloud here.
That's like when you're listening to a podcast about or a session about cryptocurrency, and somebody asks, "So what is blockchain?" And then you have to listen to somebody explain what is the blockchain for 10 minutes. We won't do that. So
thank you.
Hey, and I apologize for jumping around a lot, but going back to Drake, which is the first one you mentioned, is that desktop based?
Oh yes, that is desktop as well. So, and typically that's virtual hosted too. And there's services you can use to help kind of manage your virtual desktop to varying degrees of efficiency and cost. I personally don't like virtual desktops.
Well, I think from my experience, if it's similar to using QuickBooks hosted on a server somewhere, like that's what we're talking about, and it works, but there's a lot of disadvantages to it. challenges with
Yep,
it. Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. So to review, we've got Drake, which is desktop or virtual desktop type
Yep.
software. We've got Thomson Reuters UltraTax, which is also you can host that virtually.
Yep.
Onvio, the forthcoming pure cloud
Yep.
product, not available yet. And from Wolters Kluwer, we have Pro Systems, which is on-prem. And then we've got CCH Access, which is hosted by Wolters Kluwer. So it's sort of like hybrid. Now, the last one you mentioned is Intuit, and they have 3 products,
Yes.
you said. So walk me through the products that Intuit has.
Yeah, they've got, they're all under the Pro Connect brand. They have Pro Series, which is really friendly with QuickBooks Desktop. They kind of go hand in hand with the desktop products. And then they have Pro Connect, which used to be called Intuit Tax Online. And that's where they kind of took the name, the branding's under Pro Connect. And then Lacert is really the granddaddy of their products. It's really kind of their best product from kind of a tax form, breadth kind of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So Lacert is widely used across professionals. I'm sure many of your listeners use Lacert, and that's an old product. It's been around 30 years, but trusted by many people.
Is that Renee Lacert? Is that the same?
Uh, I'm sure it is. I don't know which branch of the family. As you all know, very prolific family in the accounting and now bill payment space.
So
Um,
yeah, that's
Lots of good stuff.
that's why
Yeah.
I've always recognized the name, because Renee Lacert is the CEO and founder of Bill.com.
Yes.
And I understand his family has a long history. I guess Lacert was a product that they created decades ago and sold to Intuit.
Yeah, I don't know the actual history of the
Yeah.
acquisition history of that. It's definitely way back before my time. I'm sure there's a Wikipedia article on it.
We'll just have to get Renee Lacert on the show to talk about it, right?
We should.
Okay, so I've got some more questions about Intuit first. So the Pro Series, you said that's desktop, hand in hand, like with QB desktop.
Yep.
Pro Connect used to be Intuit Tax Online. So is that an online product? Is that a cloud product?
It is a cloud product.
Okay.
So yes, it is, and a lot of people are looking at that because it's a cloud product. But it's a little bit older cloud product, so there are still some limitations in terms of maybe what you can do with it. For example, Tallyfor actually, so we integrate with all the products that we've mentioned. But ProConnect actually, uh, despite it being a cloud product, actually doesn't have a way for me to get data in, as far as I know.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so it's the world is still not perfect. It's
So
really not. I'm not happy with it.
because that's one of the big value propositions of a cloud product, is that you can have an API that's easy to access, and
Right.
they don't have an API that you can access.
I am unaware of it,
All right.
and I've been poking around for a long time. So if I'm wrong, please let me know. I think that's the frustration with tax software today is, so much effort is still being put into preparing a return. A lot of it shouldn't be done by humans. It should be automated. And, while that might sound scary to some people, what our customers have been finding is they love it, right? They're like, oh, the data, I don't have to worry about the data. It flows from transaction to accounting to Tallyfor to the return, and then it's to the IRS. And, what used to take, a couple hours is now maybe monitoring the data, and you can actually do, it frees your brain up, right? I don't need to think about punching the numbers in. I can think about my client. So
Well, and
there's still lots to do.
when I got my start as a bookkeeper, I would work with tax CPAs, tax lawyers, and something I remember very vividly was sitting in the office with them, pulling up a trial balance, and I would be asked to email it over or even
Yeah.
print it. There was one attorney who liked me to print it for him, and I
Yes.
would say, okay, I'm going to print you the trial balance. And then he would put it out on his desk, and he would very quickly key it in to his
10 key
tax
capability.
software. And I asked him,
Yeah.
like, isn't there some sort of import that you can do to save yourself the time of typing in all these 50 accounts?
Yeah.
And he said, there's a CSV export you can do
Mm.
that I can import, but it actually takes me more time to reformat your spreadsheet than for me to type it in, because I'm so good with the 10 key. And he was a wizard with the 10 key. He like, I got my start as a musician, so like I can play fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was playing the 10 key like it was a violin,
Yes.
and he's playing, a showpiece.
Yeah, some people. Yeah, I was pretty good at a 10 key at one time, and I kind of lost my muscle memory. And definitely, it is music in some ways. So that's a
Yeah.
great analogy. I don't know if anyone would ever have a little song on.
So somebody should hook up a 10 key. Actually,
You
I
should.
should do this. Hook up a 10 key to like to play music because well, if you got 10 keys, you only need like I think
How many more?
well
Four,
they're
four
called a
more?
10 key, but they've got more keys, right? So you
Yeah,
could hook up a whole
you could have a
keyboard.
whole octave,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you
Yeah.
could do it.
Okay.
12 notes,
Okay,
right?
Blake. We're gonna see if we can do
The 10
that.
key orchestra. I feel like this has to have been done. We'll find it.
um.
So I want to
If
review before we move on.
yeah.
I want to review the landscape of the tax software world because you're giving me an overview and education that I've always been wondering. I hear the names of these products. I don't really know what they are, what they do, who they're right for, who uses them. So I want to dig in.
And yeah, it's not comprehensive, by the way, right? There's other products out there
Right,
that
right.
I'm not mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, but like these are the big ones by market share. I take it. These are the ones that
Yes.
most firms are
Yes.
using. So okay, so Drake desktop software, you can virtualize it. I mean, you can virtualize any desktop software, so we'll just say it's
Yep.
desktop. Thomson Reuters, UltraTax, virtual. Onvio, cloud, doesn't exist yet, coming. Wolters Kluwer, Pro Systems, desktop. CCH Access, cloud, hybrid, hosted
Yep.
by the company.
Yep.
You can't go host it yourself. Intuit Pro Series, desktop, Pro Connect, cloud. Actually, that's the only cloud one that we've talked about that's actually available now,
Yes.
but doesn't have an API. And Lacert, the granddaddy best product that's been around forever. A lot of firms use it, and I take it that's going to be hosted or not
Yes.
on-prem, right?
It can be on a virtual
Okay,
machine. Yes.
virtual machine. Okay, so this is why, since there's only one cloud product here,
Yeah.
a lot of firms I talk to, they want to go pure cloud, but they can't, and it's specifically because the tax software doesn't let them do it, because they have to have like some virtual hosting solution, and or they have to have a server in their office, right? That's the big reason why a lot of firms can't move cloud.
Absolutely. That's one. One. It's one big piece, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the anchor tenants of your software
Yeah.
stack
Yeah.
that's holding everyone back. There's other. If you're in a larger firm, there's obviously other pieces that might still be in that kind of camp. But if you're a young firm starting out and you're looking, hey, what am I going to use? Yeah, you kind of hit a brick wall.
Well, so that's my next question is who are these different products for? So like let's go by firm size or
Yeah.
scale. Like if I'm a small
Yeah.
firm, which we would classify as generally under 10 people,
Yeah.
what am I looking at?
Yeah. And, there's actually a great survey from the Journal of Accountancy that's published every year on a survey of what products are being used, right, by the practitioners. And they break it down by how many practitioners purchase what product. So, Drake is definitely for kind of a solo practitioner, one or two. The cost is very low. So that's really kind of an entry level product. People love Drake's support. They talk about how support is awesome. But yeah, that's a low cost,
Mm-hmm.
easy way to get started. The certain UltraTax are kind of broad across the whole spectrum. The big firms do use them. And Access and Pro Systems are typically larger firms. So they skew more to the heavy side, right? Large firms. I do know small firms, solo practitioners using Access. I don't know many using Pro Systems, but they do use Access because it's a good product. So maybe you've got Drake on one side, you got Access maybe heavy on the other side, and Pro Systems, and then you got Lacert and UltraTax kind of covering the kind of broadly.
The broad range, like of firms of
Yeah,
all size, mid
yeah,
size.
small, all the way to large.
Okay.
That's my characterization.
So Pro Systems and CCH Access both tend to be larger firms.
Yes.
Okay. So Wolters Kluwer then, right? Those are the two products you mentioned. They really focus on the large firms. It sounds like.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think Lacert and UltraTax have their good share of the large firms as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's right. It's kind of like the payroll days where you try to poach. ADP would try to poach from right?
PayCycle or
exactly.
no Paychex. Paychex and ADP. We're always going up against each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I likened it like that. Like you may maybe switch every once in a while, or if you move firms, right? For example, if you move firms and you are using Lacerte in one firm, you're a young professional, and then maybe you get another job, and now they're using Access or they're using Pro Systems. You kind of learn both.
Yeah.
Maybe you land in a home, and now you're more of a you're more of one type, but you've seen one or two in the world, and you maybe hark back to using that, and you're. But that's kind of the world that I've. That's the way I see the world and people moving between products.
How hard is it to go from one to the other?
The UIs are all different in their own fashion. I think if you know the forms, it takes obviously some learning, but it's all form based. So that's kind of your touchstone of knowing the lines on the form. Yeah, I don't know if I know them as well as I used to, but yeah, it takes time to learn each product. I'd say for sure.
And the switching costs must be pretty high. I imagine firms don't swap out tax software very often.
Yes, it's definitely something not to be done lightly, but people have done it, right? It's not like it's impossible. And actually, at Tallyfor, we have firms that are actually more than one product because maybe they purchased a firm and one firm uses one product and then they haven't had time to migrate them all onto one. The beauty about the cloud and Tallyfor specifically is that we're neutral, right? I want to help move data from anywhere to anywhere. So we've actually standardized, our tax mappings to the IRS MEF file. That's modern e-file. So the IRS has done us a favor by standardizing the XML, right? That's nerdy language for the box designation for the box. They've actually given us a standard. So we kind of build to that. What that means for us is that we actually are agnostic to the software vendors. So you can actually have two products on Tallyfor. You could have Drake and Access. And then you do all the mappings in Tallyfor and you actually can just route it to wherever you want.
So let's talk more about how that works.
Yeah.
So I mentioned my experience watching a tax guy
Yeah.
type in a trial balance manually into
Yeah.
his tax software
Yeah.
to get what he needed to proceed. And that was the gap. It was a literal paper-based gap between our
Yes.
systems. And
Well, at least he didn't go to a PDF and then scan the PDF.
so we were a little more efficient than some. Yeah. So tell me about what you're doing with Tallyfor and how you're plugging that gap.
The world is data. Everything is data. Even if you go pay cash at your coffee shop, it's going to make it into Square or Clover immediately as a digital transaction, right? So you may think it's physical, but it's actually instantly digital. And then that transaction will flow through transactional accounting. It's same thing with the invoice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere it starts, a money transaction happens, it kind of moves into what I call the sexy world, right? FinTech is really sexy. Then there's accounting tech, which is maybe a little bit less sexy, but still essential. And then it moves to the tax world where there's now this wall. And that's where it goes back out, back in. And it's like, okay, let me just maybe be a little clear, right? I think I'm talking about direct tax, right? The indirect tax world, right? The Avalaras or sales tax is actually kind of ahead in terms of tax tech because they saw the volume problem with e-commerce, right? So e-commerce was more apparent. Hey, there's going to be a lot of transactions here. No one can be starting to key this stuff in. So that's why I think sales tax is advanced in terms of the tax technology, right? You have got all those guys that solved the problem, maybe 8 years ago. But there's still this one big underinvested space on the tax filing products. I'm talking about corporate too, right? In business, right? Intuit obviously has TurboTax, which has done right, has digitized that flow for individuals. So there's this one holdout portion that's still very important. That please someone fix it because the world is moving ahead without you. It needs to change fundamentally because the next generation expects tools to be. Blake, I know you're younger than me, but even younger, right? Why am I can't believe you should see some of the icons on these products, but it'll come. And when it does come, I think you'll see the same things of what cloud accounting did for everyone's lives.
Yeah.
It and the bottom line to be honest, right? You don't really even know what is being locked up in terms of value. I'll use that word very loosely. You can go work on the beach. I mean, you could be at your kids in the bleachers in your kids' game and do some work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to, right? Um, but
Yeah.
that stuff needs to be unlocked because you shouldn't be in the office doing all this typing.
Well, I think one of the big problems that I think causes a lot of the issues we have in accounting, which is, the work-life balance issue, the
Yeah.
difficulty attracting people into the profession issue, is all of this workload compression that happens
Yes.
in a very short amount of time. A quarter or 2 quarters of the year, it all has to happen. And there's this pressure on the accounting side to close the books, get the data over to the tax people who then have to scramble and in a few months do all of this work. And I think a lot of it is due to this issue of not being able to, the data doesn't flow easily. So
Yeah.
it's difficult to do it more than once a year. Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's a stressful life. I mean, and you highlighted something that's actually also overlooked, right? I think the bookkeeping side, the cash side, they're more of a monthly cadence. They can, if they do it right, be on top of the books, right?
Yeah.
There is actually a cycle, and that's what really good cash practices do. They have good systems that they're monitoring the data, they're helping do the payroll, but the tax people, they can't do that. They kind of wait for this big deluge of data. And yeah, your guy could type it, but he's open by himself. How can you train 50 people to type as fast as him? That's great and all,
Yeah.
but in this modern world, not everyone can do that.
Well, and
So,
do it without making a lot of errors.
well, yeah, I mean,
Right.
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, no question about it, right? So that's why it's a compounded problem. And then, I actually think there's a personality difference between a bookkeeper, a book side accountant and a tax person, right? A different knowledge set and it's a different cadence of work. And you can't just throw people across the side. Yeah, maybe someone might, but you can't just say, hey, you now are in tax world, for whatever the 3 months of during the busy seasons or the 6 months between the big humps, right? It's like, now you're tax. I'll pull you off bookkeeping.
Right.
So there is a cultural difference between the two sides of the house. And the tax side of the house, I think they need the good tools. Their life will change like the cloud accounting side if they are given the right tools.
So how does Tallyfor do this? Like, I'm doing the books in QuickBooks Online, let's say. How do you get the data? How do you get the flow going of the data into the
Yeah.
software, tax
Uh,
software?
yeah, you sign up for Tallyfor,
Mm-hmm.
and then you hit connect to, and we connect with other things. We connect to the cloud products, Xero, Intuit, right, QBO, as well as QB Desktop. And we have Excel, we have real estate GLs. We're trying to get as many GLs as possible, but we make it really easy to pull data in the really kind of Xero or Intuit QBO world. You pull it in, takes about 5 seconds. You get your trial balance. What Tallyfor is, it's a trial balance. It's a ledger in the cloud, right? So we're monitoring that data as you pull it in, and then we give you some tools to group and assign the tax lines. We memorize those over the years. We give you some automation to template, but literally once you pull the data in right,
So the
your
trial balance,
return.
that you're talking about,
Yeah.
the trial balance mapping that I've
Yes.
seen in a lot of people do this in a spreadsheet, right?
Yep.
So I take the
Yep.
trial balance and then I'll move combine accounts
Yes.
and
Combine them, group them, rename them. Um,
maybe I'll do some adjusting
yep.
entries
Yep.
there.
Adjusting journal entries, tax entries. If you do
Okay.
need to make book entries, right, the trial balance is a beautiful product idea, right? It's really the core of accounting.
Right.
It's very humble, right? It's just a chart. It's just a name and number, right? But it really is how the data is organized. And it's often overlooked as a point of organization. Yeah. So that's so
Well,
important that to get that place done right and in the cloud.
so when we say grouping, like an example would be, I don't know, the bookkeeper was very
Exactly.
detailed and had
Yeah.
20 different accounts for office expenses,
Yeah.
right?
Or, right, I put each car as an account. I bought a couple vehicles
Right.
and I decided that each one should have its account.
And
And you don't want to put each car on the return.
So
So you can just group them up.
for
Yeah.
tax purposes, we group it, and we report just that one number,
Right.
but we have to be able to trace back to the original books,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
that document is. So your software
Yeah.
takes on the role of that mapping document, that trial balance, book to tax
Yeah, I mean, we
document.
are a chart of accounts cleanup tool. I've never really kind of articulated in that way, but yes, if you have a chaotic chart of accounts, we basically give you a way to kind of clean it up, group it. Right now it's based on the tax
Mm-hmm.
kind of forms, but you could actually group it for any kind of other reporting purposes as well.
Okay, so once I've cleaned things up and I've
Yeah.
got my numbers that I want to put into the return,
Yeah.
and they're all,
Yeah.
I've got the
Yep.
lines. I know where they're going on the forms. How do you get them into the tax software? Like you were
Yeah.
saying that ProConnect is cloud based, but it doesn't have the API that you can use. I
Yes.
imagine that a lot of these hosted or desktop or on-prem products, like they don't have APIs, do they? Like how do you? This is
Yeah.
seems like an enormous challenge you've taken on.
Well, yes, it's each one has their own kind of import method. They're typically pretty good in the sense that they allow certain fields to be imported, and then what Tallyfor does is make it really easy. We give you one file to import, and you don't even need to look at it. You just import it in. It's almost as good as an API given the virtual desktop
Got it.
space, but it literally takes 5 seconds to get that data in. Um, and there's no keying, right? So that's the really important part. And that's uh, it's not an API, but it's almost as good, to be
Right.
honest, right? And some people actually prefer that because it works with their system,
No.
and they actually get the work done. The benefit of what Tallyfor does is we memorize everything. So if you have junior staff maybe coming on or they're new, they can just kind of look at Tallyfor and they just say, "Oh, that was how it was done last year. Pretty much the next year is the same." The reviewer can kind of review it and jump in right in the cloud and kind of say, "Oh, that one's good," and move it along as data should be. Now, I will say, right, CCH Access does have an API, so that product we integrate a little bit deeper, and there's a one button push. So they would push a button there, and it would go right into CCH Access. You'd select the return, and it would go in.
So what has been the change then? Like for firms that implement Tallyfor, how much time are they saving, and what is it? How is it changing the way
It's
they operate? Like
um,
why would somebody buy your product?
yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to pitch. Um, they save about the equivalent of a full-time equivalent for every 50 to 70 business returns.
And is that because each return takes that much time to do this
Yes,
manually?
yes, and it depends on how efficient the firm is themselves,
Yeah.
right? But that's what we've been seeing across our current customers and current users, and it's amazing how much time gets saved,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
especially year 2 and 3, where everything's kind of set, and you're really taking 10 minutes to move that data over. So it
Yeah.
changes everyone's thinking about how they can, not only per return costs, but now they can think about a cloud team, right? A team that's not in one office. They can think about using resources in a
Mm.
different manner. So it
Yeah.
does open people's minds, and they love it. So I'm very happy.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem we have in accounting right now for most firms is they can't attract experienced tax professionals. A good tax manager is like a unicorn, right? You can't find one.
Yes,
Um,
treat your tax managers nice
treat them
because
treat them very well, right? Um,
yes,
and so you're saying you can, I mean, maybe not a tax manager, but like at least you can save on the lower level folks, right?
yeah.
Reduce.
There's
I mean,
Well, you're using technology for what it is, right?
yeah.
Memorizing and kind of putting the flow in, and then it releases everyone's brain, right? The tax manager, as well as right,
Well,
maybe a junior, right?
and
They all can
and
stop thinking about
yes,
like, should I memorize this? Where's that Excel thing? Is it Oh, you guys made some script that maps stuff. Even that. I'm an Excel jockey. I used to do it like that,
yeah,
right? But freeing up even that friction in your brain as you scale a firm, even once you get to 5, 6 people, it's just easy.
Yeah, and a lot of firms, I imagine, have very high level people doing this: managers, directors,
Oh
partners,
gosh.
doing
Yeah.
the mapping, right? All
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
manual
Yeah.
moving of data, and
$300 an hour to map.
yeah, that's kind of crazy,
That's why your returns are cost so much. No,
right?
I'm just.
No,
I
I
mean,
think so, right? So like a lot of firms are talking about dropping 1040s, trying to get out of that
oh,
game.
everyone that we talk to, yeah,
Yeah,
it's quite a trend actually.
but I feel like if the data flowed smoothly and you had the books up to date throughout the year, it would be
Yes.
possible. You might
Yes.
have to still raise
That.
prices, but it would be possible to have a very profitable 1040 practice. But the problem is just these gaps that exist.
Yes, I think you're going to have profitable all different business lines, right?
Yeah.
Once you automate. So, there's different reasons why people choose different sweet spots, within their firm. Our job at Tallyfor is to give you the options of how to choose to deploy your personnel, basically.
So, how much does Tally4 cost? And then put that in perspective with the tax software too for me, because I was on Twitter and I saw a video from Logan. I think it was Logan Graff, who was
Yeah,
talking about how much it costs him to run his small firm,
yeah,
and then how much he makes, and
mm,
he was spending, I think it was like
mm,
$30,000 a year
oh,
on his tax
wow,
software, and that kind
wow,
of blew my mind.
huh.
Is that normal?
Uh,
is that a typical expense for like a solo practitioner, or
um,
like what it
yeah, definitely can get into four figures. I don't know
yeah,
his specific volume and stuff like that, but yeah, it easily can get to. Yeah, that's not out of the question.
yeah.
Now, Tallyfor charges $30 a return, and that's it, a return per year. So typically,
And we should
right, it
say
costs.
that's as of July
Oh yeah,
2022, in
thank you.
case you're listening to this later.
Very modest cost
Yeah.
given this the amount of time saved. Now, in terms of yeah, the stack, yes, it's inexpensive. I mean, the overall tech stack of tax is a big cost,
Yeah.
and the virtual hosting is a component. I'm not sure if that included a virtual hosting
I
piece,
think
but
it
that's an
did, because
additional cost,
maybe
right?
it did because he wasn't breaking that out. Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is right per user. It could be $1,500 a year.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it adds up.
Why do you think these companies haven't innovated in the way that Xero has, Intuit has, when it comes to general ledgers? I mean, we have so many options for cloud-based general
Yeah,
ledgers of all sizes, companies
yeah.
of all sizes. We've got NetSuite, we've got Intact in the mid-market, we've got QBO, we've got Xero, we've got FreshBooks.
That's
We've got so many choices. There's even specialized startups doing GLs like Soft Ledger,
oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yet there's been
That's a great question. Why is that?
so little
Um,
innovation in tax.
I think because tax is a four-letter word. It's baffling to me in a sense because there's such a need. But I do think there's probably an expertise barrier to build software. Is not easy, to be honest, right? You need experts that know the complexity of what you're doing. You need an engineering team that can do it. I think that the incumbents, right? There's a investment. There's no uh, incentive to invest because they have the customers already, right? And it's some ways a classic business Harvard Business School case where like, oh well, why would I do it? Why would I eat my own customer
Hmm.
by spending to build the next generation? I mean, that's why you have startups. The startups disrupt. They take a chance and they disrupt an industry because natural course of change. But it's a risk, right?
Yeah. Well,
And
we saw
it's
Canopy.
hard because
Canopy came in a few years ago and said they were going to build a tax product that would
yes,
compete with these, existing ones, and they failed.
yes.
They
So
gave
they
up.
they identified the need. Yes, absolutely. So it's great that someone identified the need. Now execution is a different issue, right? So there is a someone needs to do it. So even 7 years ago, someone tried, or 5 years ago, however long that was, right? So yes, please, someone do it. We're doing our part, but it's going to happen, right? Someone's going to do it because it's that last piece, preventing truly automated. Everyone's talking about the metaverse, right?
It,
Like, no one in the metaverse is going to be 10 keying stuff. So,
well,
um,
it can't be the difficulty of like writing the software, because like we're just talking about putting numbers onto tax forms, right? Like this is not building virtual worlds. Is it the tax law that's so difficult? Like creating I imagine that there's, excuse my ignorance, listeners who are very familiar with tax, but this is not my area of expertise as a CPA. I'm on the GL side, right? The accounting side. And so to me, I know there's a lot of complexity with like debits and credits and building a system that can actually, handle thousands and millions of transactions and all that sort of thing. But like in tax, I mean, you're taking a trial balance and you're
yeah.
you're putting it into forms. So why is it so hard to build a cloud-based version? Why did Canopy end up giving up?
Well, the tax law is definitely complicated, right? And knowing that a corpus of right, that corpus of what needs to be done is complicated, right? You do have to know it to get it right, right? This is a compliance
Mm-hmm.
product. So I do think there's inherent difficulty in that. Now, I don't think it's as hard, to be honest, right, as 3D graphics or gaming, to be honest, right? Or some of the mathematical complexity, maybe not that wide. So I do think that's such a good thing because it's within reach. But I think it needs kind of it needs a good team to build with the right vision, with the good product people, with good customers that are willing to write.
Yeah.
Um, I think that deep knowledge of the corpus of tax, you definitely need to know that history of tax and all the forms. And I think that's a big barrier. Finding people that know that and want to be in a software company is definitely one of the barriers. Finding programmers is another, right? That's
Yeah.
not right. I I say to my brother, it's just data, right? Just like what you said. It's like, oh yeah, you type, right? You just type it, and any monkey can type. But right, being able to craft a program in the cloud is definitely, you have to find the right people. They'd rather be doing gaming or meta or right metaverse. So there are challenges to building a cloud product. It's not cheap, for one thing.
Last question before I let you go. This has to do with the shift to advisory services, or the constant constant urging from thought leaders in our profession and
Mm,
from, it seems like, everybody saying you gotta replace that $500 return with a $5,000 or more tax planning package
yeah.
for clients. But
Well.
that seems like a really huge leap for a firm to take. So,
Hmm.
in the time we have left, like, do you have any advice for firms that are looking to do more advisory, to do more tax planning work? Like, what have you seen that is successful? And like,
Yeah.
let's take it from the standpoint of, I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a firm that's really heavy compliance, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing just a lot of like
Yeah.
tax
Yep.
returns, busy
Yep.
season, churning them out, right? Not a lot of planning stuff for my clients. Like, how do I even begin? Like, where would I start?
Yeah. Tallyfor is actually working on a tax planning product as well. And, I think you get a sense the data, right? There's more things you can make more money on if you take away one of these big roadblocks. So advisory is definitely something that we think everyone's going to move towards in the next, 5, 10, the decade, right? Using your brain, you automate the easy stuff, use your brain to talk to your customers and know the tax law and to really do that planning. And yes, you should charge more for that. It should be a more important engagement. Um, so, we think the software has to help you provide those services, right? It's very much like cloud accounting. 10 years ago, the product gave you a way to do different business and interact with your customers differently, and it opened up a whole new world. That's going to happen for the tax world as well with the software. So as we build our own products, we do hope other people build other products that help the professionals really live their true worth as an expert, and then build a great business around that. So more to come from us, and we do hope that right, that more products help that be possible.
So, if our listeners want to learn more about Tally4, where can they go?
Oh, tallyfor.com. tallyfor.com. We've got some great resources there about what we do and how to run a good tax kind of stack and product in the cloud.
Awesome. Peter, it's been great catching up with you. Thanks for giving me that crash course on tax software and the gaps. And I'm really looking forward to seeing innovation in this space. And congratulations for being a first mover.
My pleasure, Blake. There's plenty of stuff to talk about tax and accounting. Love to learn more myself, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
See you soon. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you learned something new. And if you did, wouldn't it be nice to get some CPE credit for it? Well, I've got great news. My new app, Earmark CPE, offers free NASBA-approved CPE credits for listening to podcasts, including this one. Visit earmarkcpe.com to download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. That's earmarkcpe.com.